Have you ever been so psyched for a sprint row, you get yourself all amped up only to fall off of your seat when you try to sprint as hard and as fast as you possibly can? Guess what? There's a solution. We're gonna talk about how to sprint properly, how to build up into sprints, and how to not fall off your freaking seat when you row. Hey, I'm Austin with Training Tall, back with another rowing video. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new, and give the video a like if you enjoy today's topic. We're talking sprinting today. How to sprint properly, how to not fall off your seat, and everything that goes into bringing your best sprint performance possible. Because after working with literally thousands of individuals on their rowing, most people love to sprint. Everyone likes to see how hard they can freaking yank it on the rower, but a lot of the times that results in poor form, injured backs, falling off the seat. So how do we do it right? When it comes to sprinting on the rower, the number one priority is safety, and especially for the lower back, because it is during rowing sprints where most rowing lower back injuries occur. So the first thing to do before you pick up the handle to start your sprint is you want to check how you're sitting on the seat, because it is so common to just sit on the rower and pick up your handle and go without even thinking about it. And what happens when we just sit? Our butt tucks under us. And when our hips tuck under us, we can't get a proper lean forward at the front end of the stroke without our lower back rounding excessively. And even if you spend some quality time warming yourself up for the sprint, if you're sitting like this is a recipe for one singular back strain that's gonna keep you off the rower and keep you away from workouts for weeks. So what do? You sit forward on your sit bones. What does that mean? Well, I have a few different analogies. The first one I like to use is sitting on your junk. You just want to sit kind of on your crotch, not like on your crotch, if you know what I mean, but it's this idea of untucking our hips, untucking our lower back, sitting forward more, almost like you're sitting the backs of your hamstrings on the center of the seat. Notice here, when you do this, your lower back gets untucked and this front end position becomes a lot safer. Our spine is much more in a neutral position rather than with our hips tucked under us like this. So not only is it safer, but you're gonna be able to get more lean forward at the front end, which is a huge component of maximizing your power when you sprint. So first thing you do when you sit down, you sit forward on your sit bones. You untuck your lower back like that. So now that we're sitting correctly, now we need to make sure that we don't fall off of our seat, which is so common. And if you've ever fallen off your rowing seat before, guilty, it hurts like nothing else. It's really painful in the moment and you get some nice tire track bruises on your butt cheeks. And the reason why you fall off of your seat when you row, it's actually a lot simpler than you might think. The reason why that happens is when we are all hyped up and ready for our sprint, we end up rowing, pushing and pulling upwards rather than straight back. If we have any sort of vertical pull, lift, swing out of the rower, we're allowing ourselves, our center of mass, to lift off of the seat slightly. And when we're sprinting and racing ourselves up and down as fast as possible, even that slight lift, that slight throwback, that slight vertical pull or push is gonna send us out of our seat, send the seat forward and your butt cheeks onto the rails. So the big fix here is to think about sitting heavy in the seat. So you wanna really sit your weight in there. I know that sounds weird because you're just sitting, but when you really think about sitting heavy and pushing, swinging and pulling horizontally only, really think heavy in the seat and horizontal push, swing, pull, you can crank up huge, quick, high stroke rates without ever leaving your seat at all. But as soon as you get vertical with it, as soon as you start going up and back rather than heavy in the seat and straight back, that's when the issues start to arise. So far, we've got sit forward on the sit bones, we've got sit heavy, and we've got push, swing, pull horizontally. Now, when it comes to actually revving up into the sprint, there's a very classic traditional starting sequence that lots of high school and collegiate rowing teams use. And there's some slight variability, team to team, program to program, but the way I like to coach it is 3/4 stroke, half stroke, 3/4 stroke, 3/4 stroke, full stroke. So it's a 5-stroke sequence, and when we talk about a 3/4 length stroke, The idea is when you're sitting ready for your sprint, you want to sit in a position where your heels are planted, and essentially to the point right before your heels start to lift. So if I go all the way to here, that's a full compressed stroke, shins are vertical and my heels are lifted. We don't want that. We want 3/4. So we find that spot right before our heels lift. Boom. This is the 3/4 stroke position. What's great about this is with our heels planted, we've got full connection to the foot plates to push back horizontally while sitting heavy in the seat. So the first stroke is a hard 3/4 stroke. Then from there, going into a half stroke, this is where we want to try to aim the handle over our ankles. So if you follow your correct sequencing, arms, then core, then legs, we get our hands over the ankles. This is about a half stroke because the seat is about halfway up from the back end to the front end full compression. So 3/4, half. And again, I'm thinking sitting heavy and pulling horizontally, especially for the half stroke. This is a very common sticking point for people where we get into bad habits of trying to pull and lean back, where we still, even though it's only a half stroke and our hands are over our ankles, our legs are only bent a little bit, we still want to think push first, then swing, then pull. After the half stroke, we've got 2 more 3/4 strokes. So we find that sweet spot right before the heels lift, 3/4, 3/4, and then full stroke into the action. So when we sequence that all together, looks like this: 3/4, half, 3/4, 3/4, full. Bingo! Now, depending on how long the sprint is, in the rowing world, 500 meters is considered a sprint, in which case you would want to follow that sequence and lengthen out to full slide strokes and working essentially as hard as you can at those full slide strokes. Now, if we're doing a short row, like 350 meters, 200 meters, 250, at that point, you would actually want to try to keep things at the 3/4 length stroke because the row is so short, it is favorable to take more strokes rather than longer strokes. And when you keep it at 3/4 length stroke, your heels stay planted, you can very quickly change direction and you can get your stroke rate up really high. And this is favorable for those super short sprints. Now those are the big components that are involved for really getting into an efficient, strong sprint, but a couple other things to think about. You want to be watching your handle height as you row, as you sprint especially, because as we row, out of any rowing machine, the handle always pulls out of the machine at a slight angle upwards, which means that as we're sprinting, if our hands are low down here, as soon as you drive back, you don't really feel connection until the handle kind of snaps up into place. So you really want to be mindful to keep your hands high and lifted at the front end, really feeding in at that slight diagonal angle. That way, as soon as you drive, you feel connection the whole time rather than finding that connection when the handle ends up snapping into position if your hands aren't high enough. Last thing to keep in mind too is try not to overly reach into the front. Even if you're sitting forward on your sit bones, we don't want to be reaching in as far as we can because this is still bad for your back. You want to be sitting tall, but we don't need to proud chest it like this, just a slight rounding forward of the shoulders, thinking about our body lean being 11 to 1 o'clock or 1 to 11, depending on whatever way you're facing. So quick review of everything. First thing we do is we sit forward, sit on our junk, untuck our lower back, sit on our hamstrings. Then we focus on sitting heavy and rowing only horizontally, not vertically. From there, we've got our starting sequence: 3/4, half, 3/4, 3/4, full. And from there, we're thinking about keeping our hands high and lifted up into where the handle feeds into the machine. We're not overly reaching, but we just got a slight lean forward, body from 11 to 1 o'clock. Those are the key components for maximizing your sprint while keeping yourself safe. So keep those things in mind when you attack your next sprint workout. I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, please let me know what you think down below. And don't forget, I offer tons of rowing resources over on my website. We can do one-on-one form reviews where I can help you get the best form of your freaking life. I've got rowing training plans and my app, of course, Just Row, with weekly workouts that are follow along uploaded every single week. hundreds and hundreds of workouts there, you and me, to get to your fitness goals. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think and what you want to see next from me, and I will see you in the next video.